Minister Fumio Kishida will step down, bowing to pressure within his party to move on from his unpopular leadership. Prime Minister Kishida will step down in September, ending a 3-year term marred by political scandals and paving the way for a new premier to address the impact of rising prices.
The most obvious first step to show that the Liberal Democratic Party will change is for me to step aside. I will not run for the upcoming presidential election. I will continue to support the new leader who will be elected through the presidential election as a comrade. This has been on my mind since the incident first occurred. Now that the diplomatic schedule for the time being has settled, I would like to make a clean break by stepping aside and moving on to support the presidential election.
His decision to quit triggers a contest to replace him as party boss and by extension as the leader of the world's 4th biggest economy. Kishida's public support eroded amid revelations about the party's ties to the controversial Unification Church and more recently unrecorded political donations made at LDP fundraising parties. In another break from the past, Kishida also eschewed corporate profit-driven trickle-down economics in favor of policies aimed at boosting household incomes, including wage hikes and promoting share ownership. All right, William Denslow joins us from Hong Kong. William, good morning. Prime Minister of Japan will be stepping down in September. Was it somewhat on the expected lines? Because we've seen how his 3-year tenure has been marred by scandals, has been marred by difficulties.
Well, Prissy, that's absolutely right. Fumio Kishida for the last 3 years really has been seen as the one to champion Japan coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as boosting bilateral ties with South Korea, also further strengthening ties with Washington. However, as you rightly mentioned, those corruption scandals have dogged the Liberal Democratic Party, and that has been a large contributing factor to Fumio Kishida's approval polls dipping to around 15%, according to the latest polling in July. So considering the fact that even though the general election isn't scheduled to take place until October of next year at the latest, clearly a strong decision from Fumio Kishida that it's best in the interest of his party to step aside. That is why at a press conference he acknowledged those corruption scandals that have engulfed the LDP, saying that the first step towards showing that the LDP has changed is for him to step down.
All right, William, this brings me to the next question as to who are the possible successors of Prime Minister Kishida.
We'll certainly wait to see who will put their hat into the ring, and we don't know yet exactly when this leadership contest will take place. We will have a definitive date for you on that by next Tuesday, according to officials, and whoever it will be to take on the role as the next leader of the LDP, which will mean taking on the role of the next Prime Minister of Japan, because the LDP is in control of the branches of government in the country at the moment. They will have the unenviable task of addressing some major issues that the country is facing, be it substantial economic headwinds that are being felt both domestically and regionally, as well as geopolitical headwinds. And there's also the factor that we're considering that not only has Japan just seen Tropical Storm Maria blow through the north of the country, but the country this weekend potentially is bracing for a typhoon, and Japan is bracing for a so-called mega quake after a 7.1 magnitude earthquake was recorded off the coast of Japan earlier this month.
All right. Also, since Japan is the 4th largest economy, William, I would want you to, explain to us the immediate fallout, the consequences which this move will have on Japan as a country, as a nation, because it is an important nation in the region. How do we see the political, repercussions of this move for Japan and for the region as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, any kind of political uncertainty always creates some kind of reverberations for domestic markets. Regional markets as well is a definite possibility. So investors around the region and in Japan certainly will be looking for a degree of certainty as to who will be taking the LDP and the country forward for at least the next year or so until the next general elections. As you mentioned, Fumio Kishida really was a champion of trying to boost workers' wages, trying to improve the minimum wage, so very much against trickle-down economics, trying to build from the bottom up and the middle out, to coin a phrase that we've heard so many times by US President Joe Biden. So those economic reverberations will certainly be something to look out for. And of course, this all comes as there are real concerns about economic headwinds we're seeing in China, which has ramifications not just in Japan, but around the world too.
All right, William, we leave it here. Thank you so much for joining in with those details.